By breakfast time, the news of the family's terrible nighttime visitor had spread all over Instep. For Ada, who had hurried to tell a talkative neighbor or two, and any event to do with Kneeknock Rise, however mild or serious, was considered the rightful property of the entire village. The morning air was chilly after the rain, and Aunt Gertrude, limp on a bench at the hearth, beside a crackling fire, held court to a stream of eager visitors. To each, she described the thunder and the moans from the top of the rise. These they had all heard for themselves, but they listened anyway. It was her right, in view of what had happened, to speak for the entire night. And then, as they leaned breathlessly toward her, she tried, faintly, but with emotion, to describe what she had seen at the window. A kind of face it was, but very white, with a wild glow around it. 2 eyes, I think, though there could have been 3. I don't recall a nose at all, but the mouth was just a big black hole. Oh, dreadful, dreadful. I can hardly bear to think about it. And the visitors would sympathetically and go away, some nervously, and some rather jealously. Egan heard one woman say to her friends as they left the house, "If Gertrude and Anson had only bought that weather vane I tried to sell them, it never would have happened. Everyone knows that an iron weather vane will crow at times like that and scare the danger away." "Nonsense," said one of the others. "A weather vane's no good. You have to grow poppies in your dooryard. No demon can stand the sight of poppies." "Oh, poppies are all very well when they're blooming," said a third, "but the very best thing of all is still a bell. The devil himself will run when you ring a bell. It doesn't even have to be a very large bell." The same kind of discussion went on in the little house all morning, and when Uncle Anson came home from his shop at lunchtime, Aunt Gertrude began on it again. "For years, Anson, for years, mind you, we've been careful. Every night, the candle, the wishbone, the onions, and in spite of it all, this terrible thing happens." "See here now, Gertrude," said Uncle Anson. "The Megrimum, if it was the Megrimum, couldn't have seen the candle or the wishbone from the back window, and he couldn't have smelled the onions either." "But that's just it," cried Aunt Gertrude. "That's the very thing that makes us out so foolish. Don't you see it? It never occurred to me before, but for all these years, we've been assuming that if trouble came, it would come politely round to the front of the house, wipe its feet, and then knock on the door. The miller's wife pointed it out, of course, in front of everyone. I've never been so embarrassed, and they were right to laugh at us." Uncle Anson frowned. "See here, Gertrude," he said, "I don't believe for a minute that the Megrimum did come down. He's got his place up there, and we have ours down here. I think it was just a stranger coming early to the fair who thought it'd be funny to scare somebody." "Perhaps you're right, Anson. A stranger wanting to scare somebody. I'm sure I've never heard of anything so mean." Yes, you must be right. Well, Annabelle was some use after all, wasn't she, with her barking? That stranger won't come here again." Aunt Gertrude sighed with relief and gave Annabelle a large plate of pancakes she had fixed for lunch. The old dog beamed at the unexpected reward and lay about all afternoon, licking her syrupy whiskers contentedly. Just before supper, Egan heard his aunt say to a late-coming villager, "Well, it may have been the Megrimum, and it may not. We scared it away, though. It won't soon come back again, whatever it was. You may be sure of that." But later, she said to Uncle Anson, "Just the same, I do believe that clock of yours with the feathers and all was bad luck, Anson. Let's have no more of those feathers in this house again, ever." "Perhaps you're right," said Uncle Anson. With nightfall coming on, they gathered close to one another before the fire. There was a special coziness in being together now, after all the uproar of the night before. Uncle Anson smoked his pipe and dreamed into the flames, devising new and daring clocks, while Sweetheart, curled into a furry wad in Ada's lap, looked the very picture of innocence, a picture which, from time to time, he spoiled by stretching out a long foreleg and arching his claws wickedly from a taut, spread paw. Annabel dozed on the hearth, snoring softly, and Egan poked at the fire with a stick, so nearly asleep that he jumped when Aunt Gertrude spoke to him. She was sitting on the bench, sewing, and she held out for his inspection a curious pouch-shaped object of bright, soft cloth. "There, Egan, what do you think of that?" she asked. "It's the last of 40 sets." Egan looked at the object doubtfully. It's pretty, Aunt Gertrude. What is it?" he said. Ada sighed. "You don't know anything, do you, Egan?" she accused. "Why, it's to go over the legs of chairs or tables, dear. Couldn't you tell?" said Aunt Gertrude, peering anxiously at her handiwork. "To keep the floor from getting scratched. 4 to a chair, and 4 to a table, too, of course. I've made them for years to sell at the fair. Mar-no-mores, I call them. They sell very well, too. I'll send a set home with you for your mother." She tucked the bit of cloth into her sewing basket. "There, all finished. Oh, how about a story before bed, Anson?" Uncle Anson yawned. "Not tonight, Gertrude. Too tired. Have to get to bed early. After all, tomorrow's the fair. Lots to do at the shop." Out on the road, in front of the house, someone in heavy boots came clumping along. Annabel sat up, listened with lifted ears, and hurried to the door, her tail thrashing expectantly. "No, Annabel," said Uncle Anson gently. "That isn't aught." The footsteps faded away down the road, and Annabel's tail drooped. She turned away from the door and lay down again, heavily, her brown eyes empty. "Poor old dog," murmured Uncle Anson. "Why did Uncle Ott go away anyhow?" asked Egan. "Oh, Ott is never happy in one place for long," said Uncle Anson. "He's a funny fellow in some ways, and then in some ways he's remarkable. Only thing he likes is reading and verses, and travel. He'll be away for weeks, and then he'll get one of those wheezing spells of his, trouble with his breathing. So he comes back here and rests until he's better, and then he wanders off again. He always took the dog along before, though, so I don't know why he left her this time. It's not like him, and that's what worries us." "The Megrimum ate him," crooned Ada. "Hush, Ada," said her father roughly. "That's nonsense. Ott wouldn't have climbed the rise. He's too much sense for that. No. He'll come back one of these days with all sorts of stories about where he's been. I just hope he doesn't stay away too long. Annabel's getting on. She won't be able to travel about much longer." "Well, how old is she?" asked Egan. "Annabel? Oh, well, I guess she must be 11 or thereabouts. 12, maybe. That's a lot of years for a dog." Uncle Anson stood up and stretched. "All right, bedtime, everyone," he rumbled, and then he paused and turned shyly to Egan. "By the way, nephew, would you like to see some of Ott's verses? They're not too bad, as a matter of fact." He took a small sheaf of papers from the mantelpiece and held them out. "They're really, well, that is, they're not too bad, even if he is my brother. Look them over." "I'd like to," said Egan truthfully. "Certainly, that's all right. Go right ahead," said Uncle Anson, as if the whole idea had been Egan's. He beamed at his nephew suddenly, gave him the papers, and marched off to bed.